Welcome to another episode of Unboxed Live. We're so glad you joined us. I'm your host today, Nate Beck. Rob is sadly out today. He won't be joining us, so I have my great friend, Charles Awad, joining us. Charles, great to have you.
Howdy. Happy to be here.
Charles is the owner and founder of Patmos Creative, a Minneapolis-based creative firm. Charles does a lot of work specializing with breweries, cocktail bars. So Charles has a huge breadth of experience, specifically in the topic that we're going to be discussing today. So it's a real pleasure to have him on board. We are excited to have some fun with you all today. Today, we are going to be talking all things unique cocktails and spirits paired with your favorite cigars. Today, Matt, let's see if we can pull this one here. There we go. If you can see that. Today, we are smoking the Fuente Casa Cuba Double Seis. This cigar, if many of you, I'm sure, pay attention to Cigar Aficionado's top 25 cigars, and the Casa Cuba Double Cuatro was the number 5 cigar of the year this year. So highly regarded by Cigar Aficionado, especially this year. So it was really cool to see that cigar pop up in Cigar Aficionado's top 25, as it's one of my favorite cigars. And as always, before I forget, we love having you guys show up every week. And in order to make sure that you are aware and alerted to when our Unbox and Box Press podcasts go live, click the like button, subscribe, make sure that you are notified to all that's going on here at Boveda. We love having you around. So click that like button, click subscribe. You're good to go.
Smash it.
Smash it. There you go. Smash it.
That's what the kids say.
And I got a bunch of kids. So for those of you that don't know, I probably have never told you this on Unboxed. I've got 5 kids, 5 girls to be exact, ages 15 up to 22. So yeah, we got to try to use as much of that lingo so they think we sound ridiculous. All right. So Charles, what are you initially tasting? We lit up our cigars before the podcast so that we could kind of get into the cigars a little bit.
Puffs in, yeah. The poblano note is significant.
Yes.
And I like it quite a lot, not realizing that we were going to get that flavor, considering the various libations in front of us, and we'll get to that part.
Absolutely.
And then lots of cocoa on the retrohale, and after you smoke and sort of set the cigar down for a moment. So right now, those are the dominant characteristics that I'm getting, and those are both characteristics that work quite nicely with the libations we have on hand today. Absolutely.
I'm picking up, in addition to that cocoa and that real vegetal chili pepper flavor, a really nice like back note of cedar, and there's some really nice pepperiness on the retrohale. So for those of you, if you don't already retrohale your cigars, it's worth experimenting and trying to see if you can figure out how to get a little bit of that smoke pushed back up through your sinuses, because at least 50% of the aroma and flavor of a cigar comes right up through your sinus cavity. And if you can do that, you can really pick up a lot of these flavors. And there's a really nice black pepper kind of spiciness that comes through on that retrohale. That's really nice.
First time you do it by yourself, because you might cough a couple times. And you look like a goof if you do it in a cigar lounge.
You're sitting over there like you just took a puff of, you know, some stuff you're not supposed to be puffing on, at least in Minnesota.
Yeah. But I remember my first cigar. Someone will yell that at you for certain across the room.
Yep. Oh, man, we have a comment from Matt. If you want to put up the comment from Levi. Levi, 10 kids. God bless you. You'll have to let us know what the mix of kids is, because mine are all girls. So I'm guessing with 10, you've got a mixture in there. But if you don't, whew, impressive.
Hopefully you like pairing libations with your cigars.
All right.
We
well,
got some tips.
I think, Charles, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
All right. So we are going to start over here, right over in front of Charles. We are starting with the Valdespino sherry. So this is a Pedro Jimenez sherry, which is a type of sherry grape. Charles, you want to talk a little bit about this type of sherry?
So sherry is a type of fortified wine, high oxidation quality. If you look at this, it's made of, it's fortified wine, it's grapes, it's second use barrels minimum. You can see that it's brown. It has like a caramel color to it because of the oxidation. So typically if you look at a glass of red wine and you know that it is a little brown in color, it's oxidized. Some people don't care for those characteristics. I absolutely adore them. Those are my favorite characteristics in wines. Me too. I love oxidized champagnes, as you know. Absolutely. And various sparkling wines. And we mutually decided that we wanted to do something in the fortified wine segment as a pairing so that we would talk about like the inclinations of sort of the smokiness that you get from that oxidation quality, as well as like the sweetness from the grapes. And of course, you can go other directions too, like a Sauternes is a sweet dessert wine. If you're smoking your cigar after dinner and you have something like a Sauternes, it's got a lot of that residual sweetness. It goes really beautifully with a lot of various cigars, or a port, which has a little bit of sweetness, often a lot of dryness, some good body. That goes really nicely with the good, firm, strong cigar.
Absolutely. And I was very excited to have you on, Charles, because not only are you one of just my best friends, and I love spending time with you every chance I get, but Charles is also a very accomplished certified beer and cocktail judge. And you have judged both nationally, like in the US and internationally.
Internationally, yeah.
So lots of experience, great palate. We have a lot of similar flavors that we have in mind.
The same things.
Yeah, we like a lot of the same things. Everything we're having here are big favorites of ours. So let me grab one of these glasses. Charles, you want to grab yours?
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll start with, what do you smell?
Yeah, you get that oxidation right off the bat, which is, you get a lot of dry fruit, dark fruit, those types of, I think raisiny is perfunctory. It makes it sound less than the sum of its parts. You don't really want to use that as a descriptor, but you could say like a prune or something of that nature. You even get like dried apricot. So lots of dried fruit, dark fruit, those types of things, currants. And then even sort of backing that, you almost get like cinnamon characteristics that are picked up from the barrel. Maybe
Absolutely.
Just a little bit of vanilla.
Because of course that's going to come through in that oak. You're going to get a lot of that vanilla, and often piggybacked on that vanilla is like a baking spice, cinnamon, allspice kind of note. One of the things that I've historically liked in this Casa Cuba is it has a little further into this cigar, it's going to, I think, pick up a cinnamon note. So I'm kind of excited to see how that pairs and what tends to come to the forefront as we try this.
Absolutely.
And before we take our first sip, I mentioned as we were starting our broadcast today that Rob couldn't be here today. Sadly, Rob's grandmother passed away. Rob's grandmother's name is Mary. So we are going to start with a beverage that is often, I would say, consumed by an older set, or it's a beverage that not a lot of young people are aware of.
Popularized.
It's getting more popularized, so it's making a resurgence. But we're going to toast to Rob's grandma Mary. So if you have something poured in front of you, let's cheers to Mary.
Toast to sherry for Mary.
There you go. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh God, that's good. Oh, that's so good. Molassesy, a little cinnamon.
Holy shnikes, is that good?
Massive dark fruit character.
Oh, I wish you could have smell and taste division, because this is outrageous. Oh.
And of course, when pairing, You want to try each before and after one another. There's no correct order, but you get different characteristics in unison with each of the things that you're pairing before and after. So take a sip before you puff, take a sip after you puff. That's sort of the name of the game. They'll both change each other. We smoked the cigar first, so we were able to get the characteristics of the cigar on its own, but not we were unable to try this unadulterated by smoke because we already had the smoke in our palate.
Yep.
So we're only now tasting this after having had smoke, which already is changing the characteristics that are present in this sherry.
Ooh, and now even smelling it, I get some other aromas.
And I like the way it sits on my palate between like the smoke. Did you take a couple puffs after
I did.
a sip?
I did. I get way more cedar in the cigar, like kind of an earthy woodiness.
Yes. Yeah, that's astute. I gather that as well. I've lost the pepper a little bit, but getting a lot of woodiness.
Lots of vanilla.
Yep.
Like that oaky vanilla kind of.
Pepper. The black pepper is
and
prevalent as well.
This grape is aged in used oak barrels. So you're going to have a lot of, some of that residual oak flavor, not nearly as much as you would get in a brand new oak barrel, say with bourbon.
Right. Yeah, they're not virgin barrels. They're always
correct.
Second use.
Yep. And sherry is essentially produced in what they call a process solera. And in its purest form, solera is, think of a pyramid of barrels. And on the very bottom layer are your oldest barrels. At the very top are your newest barrels. And essentially what they will do is they will take sherry or port, non-vintage bubbles. I actually learned, I didn't know they do that with non-vintage sparkling wine. They will pour some out. I would assume they're bottling that or consuming it. Maybe they're just, pouring some off so they can add more to it. It's still a little bit of a new concept to me, but then they will take the next oldest layer.
Yeah, they typically will bottle it over the years, and then the age statement will increase because it's been solerated for, there are rums that are available on store shelves in the Twin Cities that have been solerared for 18 years.
Well, there's a very affordable one.
Right.
The Ron Zacapa?
You're right. Yeah.
It's 23 year.
The 23. That might be the oldest age statement.
In Minnesota, it's under $40.
And it's great.
Delicious.
Very good.
If you're into rum, which you should be, and rum pairs amazingly with cigars, but we kind of wanted to go a little off the beaten path. What's unique is that next layer of barrels, which are just a little bit younger, they'll top off the older barrels with that slightly newer vintage. And then they go all the way up the pyramid until they get to that newest vintage. And so essentially those bottom barrels will always have a little bit of that residual juice or wine that was in that barrel. So you're constantly keep adding to that, and you get this unique flavor profile and balance every time you try that barrel.
Often it's produced in a single foeder or a vat where you continually add virgin beer, wine, spirit, whatever it is, to that. So it becomes almost like a mole or a mother sauce or a sourdough starter, where it always contains, or an infinity bottle, which is super popular right now, where it always contains some element of the original liquid or libation or spirit that went into that vat. So it's always present, and you're just resupplementing it. So it's like a living thing. And each time you, every batch that you try of it, whatever they take off, whether that's 30%, 50%, it's an entirely new beverage now. Because it's changed, but it still contains some of whatever was in there whenever they started solerating, which could be 5 years, could be 50 years. And
in looking at the descriptions of this particular producer, this particular wine is 8 years old. We're right about 8 years old. So they said they do a 4-layer process for their solera. So it's not extra complicated as far as how many layers of those barrels, or in sherry, they call them butts, which I think is hilarious. And that's a measure of the barrel, as well as it's 500 liters of liquid is a butt of sherry. I think in Spanish, it's a bota, I believe is what the word is.
Never heard that.
But yeah, this particular one is 8 years old. So it's absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying that.
I'm getting more oxidation now after puffs of the cigar.
Right. And I think even something like this, when you leave it out and you get oxygen into it, it's opening up the bouquet of everything that's present, including those characteristics as well. But these work brilliantly together. I think something that's important to note as well is, you know, people often say, what strength cigar or wrap should you pair with what? One of the reasons we decided to go in the direction that we did, where we're going a little bit off of the beaten path, most people want to pair brown. And even if you were to Google pairing cigars with libations, almost certainly the first things that are going to populate on Google are going to be articles about pairing brown spirits with cigars. But there's so much more that you can pair. One of my favorite things to pair, and we're not doing it today, is barley wine. I'm a beer guy. I work with a lot of breweries. I love pairing particularly barrel-aged barley wine, like a Goose Island bourbon barrel-aged, a Bourbon County barley wine with a cigar. Brilliant. The sweetness, the oak, the tannins, all those characteristics, the deep, rich barley, those characteristics alongside a cigar. There's so many directions you can go. Don't be obsessive about specifically pairing. This cigar works perfectly with this. It's not like cheese and wine. Cheese and wine, you can go wrong or you can go really right. And it takes a lot of experimentation, but just experiment, because sometimes it's complementary, sometimes it's contrast, sometimes it's strength, but you don't need to necessarily align all your factors, because those articles are going to tell you, get a light wrap cigar and get some cognac or rum. But if you get a dark wrap cigar, make sure that you have a high proof bourbon. And that's a little too understated. Well, and say that's the only way you can do it.
Rob and I had that exact conversation on our Unboxed episode discussing morning cigars. And traditionally, morning cigars are often lighter wrappered, Connecticut, mild, creamy, vanilla, maybe floral. Start your day off really light. Sure. And we came to the conclusion that you can start your day off however you want. In fact, in talking to specifically one of my new favorite cigar producers, the company is called Ace Prime, Luciano Meirelles, blends the Fiat Lux, the Sargent. He does several cigars for Crowned Heads. He actually said that the lighter cigars are generally much better after your meal. Like, so after your evening meal, about 30 minutes, within 30 minutes after your meal, when you're still, your mouth is slightly acidic, you still got a lot of that saliva, so you can taste those flavors. He said that's a great time to have that lighter cigar. So mix it up.
Most people's inclination is to treat cigar like dessert and then have a dark cigar after dinner. Myself included. I'm guilty of that as well.
And so, you know, get creative. Try some really unique pairings. One of my favorite cigars that I've ever had, I used to pair it with rosé, like really crisp, minerally, bone dry French rosé, and it was spectacular. Like, I loved everything about it.
There's something to be said for being able to smoke a cigar properly, where you're not blowing your own palate out, and your ability to thereby be able to pair that cigar with anything. I know a lot of people will drink a lager because it's a refresher. I know I get really thirsty when I have nicotine in my system. But a lager can be a nice pairing with cigars if you're not blowing your palate out.
Correct.
If you're like puffing the way that you should puff and not, you know, smoking it down to the end in 20 minutes. Sure, you're blowing your palate out. You need something that can stand up to that. That's why you need bourbon. That might be why that's so common to say, like, you have to have bourbon if you have a dark cigar. No, just smoke it normally. And you can pair it with a lot of things.
Long-term viewers or listeners to Boveda's podcast and to Unboxed Live are well aware that Rob and I are big proponents of nice, slow, long draws, so you can blow the smoke out coolly and slowly, and to not puff it so heavily. So you can really maximize the flavors that your tongue can taste. We even learned a cool technique where you can take the cigar.
Was this when you were trying to make your cigars last for
a little bit,
a week?
Yeah, but it actually works. It focuses the smoke down to that front.
I can tell by the way you're holding it, because I did watch that episode. So
I know it seems ridiculous.
I've never even done it. Am I doing it right?
Yes, I will admit I hate holding it that way. It's absolutely just silly.
Imagine just holding it like this while you're hanging out in a cigar lounge.
That's terrible. Yeah. So at any rate, I was going to mention,
joking as you retrohale. Look at this guy,
Charles. We've talked about oxidation. Do you have kind of a short explanation for what oxidation tastes like in a beverage?
Yeah, because it's so the characteristics we've already extolled, this idea of like dark fruit, dried fruit. Those are the pleasant ways to describe it. The unpleasant way to describe it, and it's often used if like a beer has overaged in your cellar. If you have a stout, and I have plenty, embarrassingly, of old beers.
Yep.
So I probably have a stout from 2004 in my cellar that when I open it is going to have lost its carbonation and taste like cardboard. Cardboard is the character.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Right. And it's only negative in that instance because you lose a lot of the essentials that you're looking for in a stout. But it's beautiful in an old ale. It's beautiful in a barley wine. It's beautiful in fortified wines, in champagnes, especially like high value champagnes, old bottles of Dom. If you're going up fishing or to the cabin in the spring and you stop at a liquor store in some small town, wherever you live, go look at their glass case in the back. And I'll bet you there's a 30% chance they have a bottle of Dom from the early 2000s. And they're probably still selling it for MSRP retail of what a modern bottle of Dom costs. That thing will blow your mind. It's expensive. Make it a special occasion wine. I remember when I found a 2000 Dom on the way to my buddy's cabin. Like
Northern Minnesota, right?
Northwestern Minnesota. And I had already bought a bunch of stuff, and she saw the lady at the counter saw the boat. And then I went back as my buddy's taking his time hemming and hawing over what he wants. And I saw a bottle of 2000 Dom, and it was like 160 or something. I was like, okay, I'm getting that bottle of Dom. So I went up to the counter. I said, can someone unlock the case? I need that bottle of Dom Perignon you have in there. She goes, I thought you were going to the cabin. I said, yeah, do you see the boat out there? We're going to film a music video. What do you care what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to take it home and drink it with my wife in a week or so. But yeah, that's a hot tip. And then you can, if you're able to find a good deal, and that's a good deal, unfortunately. Find a good deal on some old bubbles, you can experience that as well. And then blame me if you form an addiction to those.
There you go.
Those types of champagnes.
And that's the news you can use right there.
All right.
All right. So I'm still getting, and we'll move on to our next drink here, but I'm getting a lot of creamy nuttiness, like that almondy creaminess, almost like a cocoa-y, like not milk chocolate, but like the kind of cocoa that you'd make like a nice scratch hot chocolate from.
Sure. Right.
It's delicious.
Unsweetened
Yeah.
Cocoa, like 100% cocoa.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Do we want to move on to our next libation?
I think we should move on to our next libation. And if you're okay with this, Charles, I'm going to let you do the intro on this next drink because I learned about this from you.
Yeah. So this pairing here, or this cocktail, it's a 2-ingredient cocktail. It's 50-50. Couldn't be simpler. You can't screw it up. You can even eyeball it. I usually don't even measure. I measure if I make a massive batch of it. But typically, if you get 2 bottles that are each 750 ml, you just turn them both upside down and, hey, you're a mixologist now. So it's cocoa, coconut water. It's called whiskey cocoa. It's coconut water. And this is pink, but it's because it's unpasteurized. So that's the good stuff.
Let me see if I can get a shot of this here. We can see that it's pink. You can kind of see magenta. A little bit that it's, there you go.
It almost looks like, you can flip it upside down too to look through the.
Yep. And we can see it's pink.
The periscope. Yeah. It looks like cranberry juice almost.
And I picked this up
red grapefruit juice.
at Target in the refrigerator section.
Right.
So it's not complicated. You can find it anywhere.
Yeah. You can get this stuff. You can get Vita Coco. It doesn't matter. We get really high quality coconut waters available here. And then Scotch, don't go top shelf. Just get your red label Johnny, get the white label Doers.
Yeah.
Or, this is Kirkland blended Scotch.
Costco. Absolutely fantastic spirits at Costco. If you're so inclined, get yourself a home wrecker size bottle like we have here.
And then over crushed ice is the way they do it in Puerto Rico. I drank a lot of these last summer. I think it was August. My wife and I were in Puerto Rico, and it was the first time I'd had one of these. And our friends told us it's literally just Scotch and coconut water.
And Charles, we were talking about how we didn't have like a palate cleanser.
I know.
We actually do.
Take a sip. Yeah.
So we've got a little water in our melted ice.
So we'll take care of that business.
All right.
And then,
so let's get this poured.
Yeah.
We'll pour in. And I did bring.
You can certainly measure.
Cocktail measure.
Or you can just.
We'll just go.
Yeah, go for it.
Since we have it here, we'll just do 1.5 ounces.
Let's formalize it. We're fancy today.
So this is 1.5 ounces that I'm pouring in each. And then I'm not going to bother to measure the coconut water. I'm just going to eyeball that. So we top it off.
Yeah, based on our headspace,
right?
Just go up an inch, I would say.
I would think so. All right, so we'll add our coconut water here.
And so what you get out of this, because it's fresh pressed coconut water, there's a little sodium available in there. Okay, so that's going to be more 60-40.
Is it? But there's a lot of ice in there, so
true. That's why I thought the Scotch was not quite as high as what this ended up being. But
we'll see how this works.
Just do it however you want. There's no hard and fast rule.
I blew it on this. I think we're going to be okay.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Yeah, that's still tasty. So the qualities of this are the qualities of the whiskey cocoa are, you get a little sodium because it's a coconut, so it's got a little saltiness. Then you have some sweetness as well.
Yep.
And it's just inherent sweetness. It is unsweetened. It doesn't have additional sweetness.
Charles, let's pause here for a second. It looks like maybe I'm hoping they can still hear us and see us live on YouTube, but it looks like we
froze up a little here.
Like our screen is frozen a little bit here. Maybe someone
guys, you still see us?
Drop us a note in the comments and let us know if you can still see us. All right, so we got the camera stopped. Let's try this again. I'm definitely getting some saltiness in this.
Yeah, there's that's kind of a characteristic I think that
they can hear us fine.
Okay, great. Can you see
the video froze, but the audio is fine.
So I'm frozen on a pretty curious look, and Nate's over here infinitely pouring a drink.
Pouring coconut water. All right, we'll keep talking. So
see, now we're on my podcast. Now
there
we're
you go.
Libations for everyone. We're just talking about beverages. Wow.
So that's a great segue. In the description for today's Unboxed Live, you'll see a short bio about Charles, about his creative firm, as well as his podcast called Libations for Everyone. So
that's right.
Give it a listen. It's very highly regarded on most podcast platforms. Libations for Everyone. Give it a listen. I've been fortunate to be on twice, and we have an absolute blast.
We do 6 shots and 6 topics of conversation, varying levels of hilarity and seriousness. So we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of cool guests on too, so check it out if you'd like.
Absolutely. So to circle back to our cocktail, what I like about the first time that I had this, and it's the same again now, is there's this great salinity, like a little saltiness that kind of makes it almost feel creamier than it is. And I think the whiskey gets a little fruitier.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like in a whiskey highball or a whiskey and soda water. It makes it really sort of kind of blossom.
The Scotch is a key element, I would say, as well. Yay, we're back. You get the smoke characteristic that you're also lending to the cigar when you drink and smoke them together. I had quite a few of these in the beverages in San Juan prior to having had a cigar with it. It was my last night there that we sat outside of a cigar shop.
Yep.
And I had a Alma del Fuerte
from Placencia. Yep.
Which was my
great cigar
of the year last year.
Yeah.
Absolutely obsessed with those things. #Lancero Summer. And the two together, absolutely brilliant. That little bit of smoke, the residual sweetness just from the coconut naturally. And
I'm getting floral on the cigar now with this coconut and Scotch. And one of my favorite, you'll hear me say this in future Unboxed Lives for sure. I love cigars that are floral and cinnamon. I love that.
Creaminess now too.
Yeah. It's really good.
The coconut is bringing out the creaminess of the cigar as well.
Does the balance taste like what you had before? Does it taste okay?
This is, I drink them stronger, but it's quite okay that this is a little more coconut because
it is 12:30.
It's still my work day.
Yeah.
I'm still working. My clients are watching this. Hey, get to work, pal.
Unfortunately, we don't have, couches we can go nap on, after we're done here, but
I might need some more of these tonight.
Right? This is delicious. Yeah. And first place you had this was Puerto Rico, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, on that trip. And then right when I came home, I think I was texting you while I was there. Nate was one of the first people I thought of when we were enjoying these. Oh man, we gotta have some whiskey cocos. And then he came over and I mixed a giant jar.
Interesting. A giant jar. And all that pepperiness on the retrohale that was there kind of in the first third of this cigar is now just creamy on the retrohale. Are you getting that?
Very much so. It's very creamy.
Like it's really mellowed out that pepperiness, which I'm really digging.
You did a fine job of selecting a cigar that I think works across.
Oh, thanks, man.
We sort of mutually decided that something, like, let's shoot for the middle.
Right.
Especially because that'll help for us to describe what we're tasting and give
Yeah.
you sort of at least a baseline expectation for, you know, do you want to go darker? Do you want to go lighter?
Mhm.
You can experiment. If you're going to try any of these beverages we're having today, you can make a determination of whether you want to taste what we're tasting or if you'd like to pull out some lighter characteristics, darker characteristics. The choice is yours.
Can be as affected as we. We were joking before we came on camera that for those of you that are near my age, which is 48, this will always make me think of sherry in a glass like this, Frasier. So if you remember the show Frasier, nearly every episode before dinner, they would have a glass of sherry. So
Pronounced Frazier, but
Frazier. We couldn't decide. I would assume I'm probably Niles and you could be Frasier.
all right. I said earlier I'd rather be the dog. I forgot his name though.
Oh, that is right. I don't remember what
Benny
the
or
dog's name is.
something.
All right, so we have a question here from Mo. What are your thoughts about dipping the cigar in your drink? How do you do it? All right, so I've actually tried this, and I think, Mo, you might be referring to if you've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger's video where he talks about tequila cigar, and you roll it in tequila, and it tastes like tequila. Yeah, exactly. So we tried it. Another friend of mine, we tried that with bourbon. So we actually took cedar and we brushed the cigars with bourbon because he said you can use really any spirit, vodka, bourbon, whiskey. And then we smoked it. And then we actually dipped the tip in the cigar as well, just like the video. I'm going to say for me, it's not my favorite. Like I wouldn't choose to do that on a regular basis. It kind of
for me, Doug.
It kind of made it bitter, like both the spirit and the cigar for me. So I wasn't a huge proponent, but I'd say for sure, give it a go. It's worth trying out.
I would just say, especially based on the thematics of this episode, just drink it.
Mhm.
That's how you're going to taste it. You want to taste both. This one's made of smoke. That one's made of liquid. Drink the liquid, smoke the smoke.
I will say
That's my recommendation.
he's an incredible storyteller.
Who's that?
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold. He gives me the cigar and then he takes it and I'm like, what are you doing? I love the story. If you haven't seen it,
I'd smoke a cigar with Arnold.
I would too. Go look for Arnold Schwarzenegger tequila cigar. It's hilarious. It's maybe a couple minutes long. But hopefully that answers your question, Mo. So I'd say give it a go, try it. But I didn't find it to be a super pleasant experience. I'd rather just have my drink and my cigar.
Yeah, don't knock it till you try it, but then knock it after.
I don't think I could have said it any better, Charles. So do we want to discuss any more flavors here or should we move on to cocktail number 3?
Yeah, I'd hate to be so hyper minimal, but tastes good.
Tastes good.
There's just a lot happening, but it's a lot of flavors that work really beautifully together. And depending where you live, you can either do this right now and really enjoy it. You can do it in Minnesota, enjoy it. That's where we are currently. Yep. But in a couple months, these things out in the yard, grills fired up, got a bonfire going. They go down easy. Easy. Make sure someone can carry you up the stairs.
I generally don't want to consume beverages or cocktails in my home that are more than 3 ingredients. And if they're even proportions, even better, because one, I don't have to source maybe a hard to find liqueur or bitters. I can grab that drink and even eyeball it. Like Charles and I are huge fans of Negronis. And if you don't know what a Negroni is equal parts, traditionally, gin, sweet vermouth, and Campari. And Campari is a bitter orange liqueur. It's readily available at nearly every liquor store. If you can't find Campari, Aperol would work in a pinch.
Yeah, that's a Contessa.
Yep.
Well,
so
yeah, Contessa is like the white variation. There are so many variations on a Negroni, but the standard gin Negroni.
And our next drink will factor into that Negroni cocktail because it includes something that can be a variation on that drink. But a whiskey Coco, a Negroni, any of these spirits, you don't have to think about it. You're done with your long day. You want to fire up a cigar. You just grab your glass, you pour, you sit down, you enjoy.
That's right.
And I think that's what most of us really like. And not only is it easy, but they're delicious. Absolutely delicious.
So something I want to speak on really quickly, Nate. Things to avoid pairing. because we're talking about how you compare everything. You compare everything. The two things that I avoid with smoke are two things: spice. You ever eaten some jerk chicken and smoked a cigar? Doesn't feel good. So spicy drinks, which I enjoy, but I don't want it with a cigar. The other thing is high level of bitterness. I love Malort, unabashedly so. Make fun of me if you want. I like a lot of digestifs and things of that nature, a lot of Italian spirits that are highly bitter.
And for those that don't know, Malort is a Chicago spirit that is generally often consumed as a shot, almost as a dare. It's called Jeppson's Malort.
They also make fun of themselves on social media, which is hilarious, but I actually love it. I'm Lebanese.
We both
I
like
bitter stuff. I like bitter stuff. And Nate does.
I would agree with you.
So, or like Elixir Novasalis, which is an Italian spirit that is very bracingly bitter. Nate and I took a shot at a bar in Chicago.
Sadly, now closed bar.
La Serena Clandestina. And they almost thought that they were daring us to do it. And they gave us some free spirits. And we were like, no, we like this stuff.
We seek it out. But
I don't want a cigar with it.
I will agree with you wholeheartedly, because especially with spicy food or a spicy cocktail, the smoke actually makes your tongue, I think, burn even more. And you just really can't taste anything because your tongue is really blasted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your palate is just not going to be able to taste all those flavors. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that assessment.
What are you tasting now in your cigar? I'm getting tons of cedar now.
I get a lot of that. I'm tasting sort of the vestiges of the smoke as well, which, you know, you can draw a lot of characteristics when you're not actively puffing the cigar. Getting a lot of that, getting like a little bit of sort of nutmeg, cinnamon, cassia. Pepper. The black pepper is still there.
I love that cinnamon note. That's like my favorite thing.
Yeah, that's great. And it with all those characteristics with coconut, that's excellent.
Do yourself a favor. Organic coconut water. And I think this is cold filtered. Get the high quality stuff, readily available pretty much anywhere. Blended Scotch, Johnny Walker Red is a great example. You said Dewar's White Label.
Right.
This
Kirkland, I do Johnny Red almost exclusively. Why not? It's like $17 for $7.50.
Costco's are everywhere.
Go ahead and get bad coconut water. That's what it's funny because in Puerto Rico, they'll crack a coconut in front of you and put a straw in it. That's awesome, but they're not going to make you a whiskey cocoa like that.
Correct.
They're going to use just like vats of not so great coconut water, and they're still delicious. So do what you like.
This Kirkland, I think, is an absolute mirror of Johnny Walker Red.
It works.
And this large bottle at Costco, I think, is like $18. So it's a great value. It's really high quality spirits. They have, you know, the ability to get lots and lots of barrels. So really good stuff. So we have our whiskey cocoa. We've had our sherry. Our last drink is Mezcal. And Charles and I are humongous fans of Mezcal. This particular Mezcal, let's see if I can feature this bottle here. This is a producer called Del Maguey.
I'm gonna lift it up.
Yeah, let's lift that up a little bit there. There we go. So this is Del Maguey Vida, and this particular variety is called Vida de Muertos. And Del Maguey, do you want to talk a little bit, Charles, about all the different varietals of Del Maguey?
Yeah, they do single village mezcals all throughout Mexico. And as you may be aware, if you're a fan of agaves, it's very simple to state that something is a mezcal or something is a tequila, but there's so many variations, types of agaves. They pair up with villages and producers all throughout the country. And each of the resulting mezcals has entirely different flavor characteristics, and they're absolutely stellar across the board. They all have different flavors. You know, some are cheesy, some are funky, some are grassy, some are sweet. But
and on their website, you can actually go to their site. We won't talk about the tasting notes that are listed, but they will spell out the type of agave, the process that's used to make this mezcal. They do where it's made. This particular mezcal comes from Oaxaca. The agave species is A. Anguistifolia Haw. So it's they tell you the exact type of agave plant. And then they tell you the type of wood that they use to actually roast the hearts of those agave plants. So they look like a giant spiky, almost like aloe plant. I mean, there's just lots of big fans that come out.
They chop off all those
They chop them all off with this little like circular blade at the end of a pole that's super sharp. And they take that heart and then they roast it. So they even list out, let's see, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different woods that are used in the cooking and smoking process of this mezcal. And so, Charles, if I understand it correctly, all the spirits like this, including tequila, are technically mezcal, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was reading the part about Malort tasting like Satan spit into an ashtray.
Let's read this. Bruce, as a Chicagoan, I can confirm Malort tastes like Satan spit into an ashtray and someone bottled it.
Amen. Can I say that?
Amen.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Charles and I agree it's delicious. Bruce, we will enjoy some the next time I see
Bruce,
you in person.
Let's do a shot of Malort, will we?
So I'm going to pass you a glass here, Charles.
Please.
All right.
Sorry, what was the question?
So the question is I think much like bourbon versus whiskey, if I'm not mistaken, to be tequila is technically a mezcal, but it comes from the tequila region of Mexico or the Jalisco region, but all of them are mezcals.
The crude way to state what mezcal is the roasting process that takes place with the agave. That's our understanding of it in the United States.
Because most tequilas are roasted in large pressure cookers.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
And these are roasted.
The open flame is what adds the smokiness to these.
Correct. And it's delicious. So we have the Del Maguey Vida de Muertos. I think I paid here in Minnesota right about $50 for this bottle. So it's not super expensive. It's kind of like buying a scotch.
Mid-level. Del Magueys are in that range. And
then they can go way up from there and some really unique single village, almost like single origin. It's really like the closest thing to single malt scotch that you have with mezcal. It's really unique.
Here's another tip: when you're smelling spirits, keep your mouth open. Otherwise, you pull in a lot of harshness of the solubles. So keep your mouth open and then draw through your mouth. And then when you smell the spirit, you're smelling all the essentials that you actually want to draw in through your nose instead of that harsh burn.
That is a great tip.
Very vanilla, grassy on the nose. Little bit of smoke, but not a lot. You can tell this one's not going to be terribly smoky.
It's not super smoky, no.
Go ahead and hit it.
Yep.
Very smooth. Ooh, high level of florality. Really floral, like lavender floral, grassy, sweet. Smoke is very low on this.
Oh,
so if you look
really
at it,
low.
If you look at it that way, then if you're going to pair this with a cigar, you're getting more smoke from this. So you're making this a smokier mezcal in effect.
Correct.
Because there's not a lot of smoke contained in this, but there's a lot of smoke contained in this. So give this a shot.
Oh, and I think we're actually sort of boosting up that poblano chili pepper, that kind of green pepper, not green bell pepper, but chili pepper. I think there's a lot of that note in this.
It's pulling out some interesting floral qualities too.
Yeah. Oh man, that's delicious.
Dare I say incensey, but that sounds so negative.
No, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? There's just something about it, like the spices and incense with like the floral qualities of an incense as well.
I will often say, and I've told you this before, and I've mentioned it a couple of times before in Unboxed, I will often equate what a cigar tastes like to being similar to how a really great fragrance smells.
Yeah. Most of your sense of taste comes from the olfactory.
The floral notes,
smell is taste.
The spice notes. Yeah. Sometimes that incense, the real, like the base notes of a fragrance, which are the really kind of earthy fragrances that last in a cologne or a perfume, in the best possible way.
Yeah, I'm loving that. That was a great selection. I don't know how intentional that was from reading the characteristics, but sometimes it's hard to guess. You can say,
I was just intrigued.
I know what the cigar is like. I haven't had this mezcal, but I like the characteristics that are displayed on the label.
I was shooting for, because these mezcals are, their base mezcal is just called Vida. So it'll just say Vida here. A great, probably $35 to $40 bottle, depending on where you live and what your taxes are like where you live. That's a great mixer. This was in that $50 range. I wanted to do something that was in kind of that $50 range for this particular brand.
Yes.
And I just really liked the notes that they were calling out in this mezcal, and I'm super happy with this.
I avoid the Vita. It's gone up in price considerably. If you want to shelf Mezcal for mixing, I would get something else. If you want to get Del Maguey, go for the
good stuff.
Just go whatever,
Yep.
elevated from there. Just go up from there.
Yep. Oh, man, that smells delicious. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of that floral, vegetal. Like another way I would equate it is like a garden that would have, let's say, some flowers around the edge, some herbs in addition to the vegetables.
Sure.
This is like to use a $50 word, melange of all of those different.
Bouquet garni.
There you go.
Oh, tarragon.
Smells and aromas.
Little tarragon, now that you've said herbal.
Right? Oh, totally.
That's very cool. The possibilities are endless.
To circle back, and then we'll get to a few questions that YouTube listeners and viewers will have. If you're a fan of Negronis or you want to try an amazing spin on a Negroni, sub out for the gin Mezcal, or sub in for the gin Mezcal.
Yes.
So take the gin out,
Mezcal Negroni.
put in an equal part of Mezcal. And I would say you and I really like the smokier Mezcals when it comes to a Negroni, but this would be amazing.
Something for everyone. Yeah,
Because
I don't
this
know if you
has-
want to adulterate this because it's so
Right?
good straight.
But Mezcal, if you have like a really good entry level, like, rail Mezcal, if you want to call it that,
Yep.
in a Negroni adds a smoky element that's really pleasant and it's super tasty. So, Matt, should we get into some questions? All right. So first question from Jim Fiore. Awesome. This should be a great recurring theme. I quit drinking 10 years ago, so finding other things to pair with has been tricky, and I assume he means with cigars. I've always loved coffee, so I do pair very often with cigars. Can you please try regular off-the-shelf coffees as well, such as McDonald's or 8 o'clock or whatever? Just for example, a lot of these, quote, microbrew companies are often expensive and difficult to get. Thanks for the great content. So we were discussing this before we went live on air, and I think it's a great idea. However, those McDonald's 8 o'clock coffees tend to be highly bitter, one-dimensional, not a lot of flavor there, and you're going to lose a lot of the nuance in your cigar. Charles, you made a great point that I'd like you to share about what would be an even better option that's just as accessible.
Yeah, pairing coffee and cigars is, especially like traditionally brewed coffee, like a cup of Joe, it's more difficult than it seems on its face. For me, often I just taste chicken soup. I'm like, wow, that tastes like chicken soup. So having it, you can drink your coffee no matter what it is with a cigar. For me, that's not a pairing. You're smoking a cigar and you're drinking coffee.
Yep.
Finding a great coffee to go with a great cigar is a challenge. Like a natural Ethiopian with blueberry notes, that type of thing. And that's precisely what he's speaking to, is that those can be costly and it can be hard. If you don't align it and you got it for that purpose and you paid $22 for an 8-ounce bag, that's kind of a pain.
Yep.
Espresso. That would be my methodology to cheaply pairing and successfully pairing cigars without doing a lot of R&D. Go get yourself a shot of espresso from your local cafe. Typically, what is it, $2.50 for a single shot, maybe $4 for a double shot.
Yep.
And you just take your time with it. And you can still have your Dunkin' coffee or whatever it is that you enjoy drinking, also supplementary to that. But if you're talking about pairing that cigar, have a little bit of that espresso, because that's what you do when that's my favorite thing to do when I'm in Lebanon at my condo, is having the Turkish espresso out on the veranda overlooking the Mediterranean, smoking a Cuban, because you can get them there, and just taking sips of that and looking over at the sun coming up. That always works. It always works. You don't have to, there's no guesswork. And then you're going to waste the least amount of money if you don't have to guess.
Yep. So if you're really looking to have an inexpensive or easily accessible coffee beverage with your cigars, get a good shot of espresso from your local cafe and skip the cheaper coffees.
Or if your neighbor has a espresso or
a Nespresso or a machine like that. So Matt, let's go to the next question. Cellophane or no cellophane when storing your cigars? I never remove cellophane from any of my cigars. I don't know any of my friends who are cigar enthusiasts or who are aging cigars or who have a large collection of cigars, they all leave the cigars as they come in the box. So some producers, they're all cellophane.
Now.
You do?
Yeah.
It's all preference. If you want to take the cellophane off, knock yourself out. It won't hurt the cigars. If you want to leave the cellophane on, it does breathe. They're meant to be aged that way. In fact, some cigar smokers really enjoy finding that really aged cigar and they take the cellophane off and it's really yellow and orange.
Yeah.
It's almost died because of the oils and sugars that have leached out from that cigar. So
it's kind of a fun effect.
Really it comes down to preference. You don't have to, but if you want to, and some cigar producers don't even cellophane their cigars. Tatawahi, for example, really doesn't cellophane any of their cigars. Comes down to what you like. So if you don't want to take the extra time, they're just fine as they are. I think, Matt, we have one more question. As a new to Boveda user, do I really need to season for 2 weeks? Yes. And can I use the seasoning packs to season another humidor? No. And here's the reason why. When you are using Boveda's 84% humidity packs for seasoning.
Which I'm rehumidifying with currently.
Yes. The reason why we tell you to do that process for a full 2 weeks is that wood takes a very long time to gradually absorb all of that moisture. And your humidor, depending on the quality of your humidor and if it's really lined with 1/4-inch cedar and the rest of the wood is either lacquered or finished, that wood can potentially absorb 30 plus grams of water. And if you're using the 84% packs for only a couple of days, you're maybe only getting a couple grams of water into that wood, which means when you put your cigars back in there, the cigars are going to be the first thing that wood is going to pull moisture from. So leave them in there for 2 weeks without cigars, forget about it. And that wood is going to absorb all of the moisture that it can. And then when that's done, those packs have given off all that moisture that they can. They're still going to feel pillowy, but if you're going to season another humidor, you want to start with fresh packs so that they start out at the right humidity and fully humidify the walls of that humidor. So get yourself, if you have a 50 count humidor, just get 2 more packs. They're $4 each. You can get them from Boveda store, bovedainc.com. You can buy them from our store on Amazon, or go to your local brick and mortar shop and grab 2 more packs. They would appreciate the business. Get some more cigars while you're there.
And Nate, you recommend doing it every 6 months?
I do, actually.
Taking
especially
the cigars out, put them in your 1 year bag.
Yep.
With, your standard, whatever percentage you're using.
Correct.
And it's, I guess for me, the way I look at it is it's like an oil change.
Mm-hmm.
So every 6 months,
especially here in
humidify, it helps maintain that moisture,
Absolutely.
Make sure that everything's humming along. You don't have to guess about the humidification level of your cigars in there. It keeps everything humming along and perfectly humidified.
I think the majority of people I know that have humidors have 40 or 50 count humidors. Mm-hmm. You have maybe hundreds of dollars worth of cigars, and
absolutely,
it's $4 a pack. You're going to need 2 of those for a 50 count humidor. Get yourself $8 worth of Boveda 84% packs and season it that way.
If you're like me, you've always got plenty of the 1 year bags on hand for your overflow, because you probably need a much larger humidor. But
Yep. And that's a great use for those 1 year humidor bags. Use those for extra box storage, extra cigar storage when you don't have that space in your humidor.
Overflow.
And I think that's our last question for today. I want to thank you all for joining us as we tried some unique cocktails and spirits that you may not have thought of to pair with your cigars. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were enjoying a great cigar and maybe a little bit of a, noon cocktail, if you will. We're so glad you joined us. Again, click that like button, click that subscribe button so that you are always aware when our new content is coming online. We're so glad that you joined us here today. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time from Boveda. Charles, thanks for coming.
Cheers.
Cheers.